Believe it or not, we're almost halfway through the 2026 NBA season, and we're starting to look at some of the moves that happened in the 2025 offseason and maybe starting to get a feel if these teams regret these specific moves. So for today's video, I'm going to look at the biggest regrets of the NBA season so far, using hindsight to see what teams could have changed a couple months ago when maybe it was right in front of them. And I think an obvious one has to be Norman Powell getting traded from the LA Clippers to the Miami Heat. The LA Clippers regret this a ton right now. Last year, Norman Powell was a great co-star next to James Harden on the offensive end of the court, while Kawhi Leonard missed a ton of time in the first half of the 2025 season. The Clippers ended up winning 50 games in 2025, and Norman Powell almost won Most Improved and was playing like an all-star talent. And the Clippers did not want to extend Norman Powell, could be a free agent at the end of the 2026 season, so they traded him to the Miami Heat in a 3-team deal, which netted them John Collins from the Utah Jazz. Now, John Collins hasn't been a bad LA Clipper this year, but they were supposed to replace Norman Powell's production on the perimeter with Bradley Beal, who got waived and stretched out by the Phoenix Suns. He signs a 1+1 for about $5 million with the Clippers, and he suffers a season-ending hip injury after 6 games this season. Bradley Beal shot 37% from the field, 36% from 3, and averaged 8.2 points per game in those 6 games, while Norman Powell is still playing at an all-star caliber level now in the Eastern Conference for the Miami Heat. 24.4 points, 3.8 rebounds, 2.7 assists, shooting 48% from the field on about 16 shots a night and 42% from 3 on about 7 shots a night. He's almost averaging identical numbers to last year's Clippers season, but honestly even better this year for the Miami Heat. And the Clippers have been one of the more disappointing teams in the NBA this season. They're 12-22 with an aging roster right now, and we're seeing if Kawhi Leonard or James Harden misses some time, they don't really have the offensive firepower to make up for the loss in their scoring ability on a night-to-night basis. And that's what Norman Powell provided the Los Angeles Clippers last year. They were trying to think that we can add to the front court depth in John Collins, who was also an expiring contract like Norman Powell, and bring in Bradley Beal after somewhat of a down couple years in Phoenix. That just hasn't worked out whatsoever. Norman Powell would be a crucial part of the LA Clippers right now, who don't own their first round pick this year, who are projected around 50 wins going into the 2026 NBA season, and they may not even come close to that. Now, we may never know what exactly was offered to Golden State, but they have to regret not trading away Jonathan Kuminga in some type of sign and trade in the 2025 offseason. Either it was somehow Grayson Allen from the Phoenix Suns and a first round pick, or Malik Monk and a first round pick, or Malik Monk and Keon Ellis from the Sacramento Kings. Maybe the New Orleans Pelicans or the Chicago Bulls had somewhat of a realistic offer for Jonathan Kuminga. Golden State has to regret not trading Kuminga in the offseason after a couple good playoff games, maybe just latching onto some potential he can have going into his age 23 season. But everything has really taken a nosedive in terms of Jonathan Kuminga's value this year. He essentially signed a 1+1 with the Golden State Warriors last offseason. It's $22.5 million this year, $24.3 million next year on a team option. Not sure any team really wants to pay Jonathan Kuminga that dollar amount next year, but is he also okay going to unrestricted free agency? And would he even re-sign with the team that trades for him right now, which is making a Kuminga trade very complicated for when he's trade eligible on January 15th. But Kuminga is having the worst year in a couple of seasons with the Warriors this year. His scoring is down from 15 points to 11.8 points. The field goal percentage is down 45% to 43%. He's only played 18 games for the Warriors this season and has even been getting some DNPs, coaches' decisions, this year. So he's completely out of the rotation at times. He's dealt with some injuries this year as well. He hasn't played for the Golden State Warriors since December 18th. And when the Golden State Warriors were very shorthanded against OKC, Kuminga was also out in that game as well. And you just can't think that Golden State is going to get anything super valuable straight up for Jonathan Kuminga at the moment, unless it's for a veteran on an expiring contract, or they're going to have to attach additional draft capital to Jonathan Kuminga if they want to get a really good rotational player to help them go win it all. Like if they wanted to go out and get Michael Porter Jr. from the Brooklyn Nets, they're going to have to pony up some draft capital in that trade as well, along with Jonathan Kuminga. And maybe another piece, honestly. Kuminga has lost a ton of value this year for the Golden State Warriors. They could have sold high on him maybe in that 2024 offseason. In hindsight, there was somehow a Jonathan Kuminga for Lowry Markkanen trade that year, but that never transpired for Golden State. They didn't really want to pay the price that Markkanen was going for. Markkanen's value took a little bit of a nosedive last year for Utah, and now Utah would laugh in Golden State's face if they somehow offered Jonathan Kuminga for Lowry Markkanen in January. And this is going to be a pivotal piece for Golden State this year at the deadline. I expect them to be active in some way, shape, or form. Last year, they traded for Dennis Schroeder a couple months before the deadline, and then they used Dennis Schroeder's contract to go out and get Jimmy Butler. I don't know if we're going to see anything on the scale of Jimmy Butler's size for Golden State. You just have to think Jonathan Kuminga is somehow going to get traded, right? Like, even if nothing transpires up until the trade deadline, the Bulls have to accept Kuminga for Vucevic, right? I'll be honest, I love this signing when it happened. I was very shocked he didn't go back to Philly. The Knicks signing Guerschon Yabusele with their taxpayer exception has to be a move they regret right now. Guerschon Yabusele signed a 1+1 with the Knicks, $5.5 million this year, $5.7 million next year. That is a player option. He's in his age 30 season, and he is not looking like the same player he was for Philadelphia last year. He gets drafted in the first round by the Boston Celtics back in 2016. He plays 2 years with Boston and then goes to play overseas, and he was really a standout in the 2024 Olympics for Team France. Philadelphia takes a flyer on Guerschon Yabusele, and he was a great rotational player for the 76ers last year. 11 points, 5.5 rebounds, 2 assists a night, shot 50% from the field, 38% from 3, was diving for loose balls, was a solid enough defender on that end of the court, and it's all been kind of the opposite this year. He's really been in and out of the rotation under Mike Brown in New York. He doesn't really look like he's in game shape. He looks slower, lethargic out there, and he's just not really had much consistency, and he's not knocking down his threes. He's not knocking down his twos, so he doesn't really have a spot here in the rotation. Mike Brown, even with the injuries to Josh Hart and OG Anunoby this year, has opted to play Landry Shamet more, Jordan Clarkson more, Kevin McCullough, a second-round pick from last year's draft, a little bit more as well. And even Tyler Kolek and Arrow Hukporti have played more than Guerschon Yabusele this year, who was supposed to be a really good rotational piece for the Knicks, a backup power forward for a team that really didn't have too much depth in the front court after Karl-Anthony Towns and Mitchell Robinson. And this is a decent amount of money. The Knicks could have maybe went out and signed somebody different, an athletic wing out there that could have been a little bit more of a mainstay in this rotation. You have to think that the Knicks would like to have this one back, and I'm sure they're going to try to do everything they can to trade this contract at the deadline. Now, here's a controversial one. It's more so the trade, not the draft pick. The Pelicans trading up to select Derek Queen. Now, Derek Queen has been a top 5, top 6 rookie this year, and I'm so excited to watch him in New Orleans going forward. I'm not saying they're regretting drafting Derek Queen whatsoever. It's more so trading that unprotected pick swap between them and Milwaukee to Atlanta to go out and get Derek Queen. There were even some reports in the offseason that Atlanta's front office had to double check with Joe Dumars in New Orleans and even triple check that this was an unprotected pick swap, which makes me think that New Orleans could have maybe attached just a top 3 protection on this, hedged their bet in a 3-headed class of Darren Peterson, DeBanza, and Boozer to offset any disastrous season here in 2026. And it's been a disastrous season here in 2026. The Pelicans got off to one of the worst starts in the league. They're currently 8-29 right now through their first 37 games. That's the second worst record in the NBA. Now, this team is still way too talented to finish as a bottom 3 team, in my opinion. But who knows if they're going to sell at the deadline? Who knows how DeJounte Murray looks when he comes back from an injury? Who knows how these rookies are going to look over the course of the season when they play a little bit more and have a higher usage rate? I think Jeremiah Fears and Derek Queen have been a really good rookie duo so far, but is that going to result in wins this year? Not necessarily, and this team does not own direct access to their first round pick. So I'm sure, looking at the team right now, they definitely regret making this an unprotected pick swap. I think in hindsight, they would have loved to have done a top 3 protection, a top 5 protection on this, or traded away any different first round picks down the line, or maybe attaching a bunch of seconds or Jordan Hawkins to this deal, a little bit more lucrative to Atlanta to also accept that offer instead of getting this unprotected pick swap, because the Pelicans were projected to win around 32 games, and I thought they were going to be way more competitive than this. But what about Giannis in Milwaukee? Who knew how this season was going to go for the Bucks? Another team that is right now at the 11th spot in the lottery, which is now giving Atlanta 2 chances at a top 4 pick in a very loaded 2026 draft. So I'm going to think Joe Dumars regrets this trade a little bit. No matter how good Derek Queen is right now, I'm not saying they regret the draft pick. They regret the trade. Another team that has been disappointing this year and has been a bottom 10 team in the NBA, the Dallas Mavericks, who had a very entertaining offseason at the start of it, winning the 2025 draft lottery to have this selection of Cooper Flagg at the top of the 2025 draft. And Cooper Flagg has been great this year, but we knew that one of their best players, Kyrie Irving, was going to miss the first half of the season, and this team did not hit on their point guard signing in the offseason whatsoever. So I do believe that they regret not handling the point guard position better. We've had to see Cooper Flagg play some point guard this year as an 18-year-old, which maybe inevitably got Nico Harrison fired. That is a conspiracy out there that Jason Kidd wanted Nico Harrison to go, so he was just playing Cooper Flagg at the point guard spot when Dallas was one of the worst teams in the NBA to start off the year. D'Angelo Russell has not really been a great point guard, and sometimes this year has been outplayed by Ryan Nembhard, an undrafted point guard on the offensive end of the floor. Neither of those two point guards are good defensively, but this team has really lacked a ball handler and a creative playmaking weapon to have out there with Cooper Flagg and Anthony Davis. And there was a bunch of other point guards that they could have maybe looked at and signed instead of giving $11.5 million to D'Angelo Russell. Kevin Porter Jr., Ryan Rollins, Russell Westbrook, Spencer Dinwiddie, not a point guard, but Tim Hardaway Jr., Aaron Holiday, Bruce Brown, all went for less on a per year basis than D'Angelo Russell. So maybe they could have signed a couple of those guys because this team really hasn't had that much point guard depth either. Another bad point guard signing out there that this team maybe would have liked to have back, Tyus Jones going to the Orlando Magic. I don't think Orlando was regretting the Desmond Bane trade yet whatsoever, but Tyus Jones has been arguably the worst rotational player in the NBA this season. He's appearing in about 16 minutes a night. He's played all 36 games for the Orlando Magic, and he's even started 8 games for this team as well. He's shooting 37% from the field, 31% from 3, and averaging just 3 points and 2 assists a night for $7 million a year. Now, there's no such thing as a bad one-year deal, but I wonder if Orlando would have liked to have this signing back, given that Ty Jerome didn't go for that much more on an annual basis. I know Ty Jerome hasn't played yet this year, but I'd rather have the idea of Ty Jerome right now coming back from an injury than what Tyus Jones has given the Orlando Magic so far. Trey Jones, Tyus' brother, has been a lot better as well. Heck, even the aforementioned D'Angelo Russell would probably be a better player than Tyus Jones at the moment, because it's not like you're even getting plus value from Tyus Jones on the defensive end of the floor. I don't know if this is one of the bigger regrets as well, but Luke Kennard signing that 1 year, $11 million with the Atlanta Hawks. I don't think he's lived up to the expectations of $11 million so far in Atlanta. I wanted to sprinkle that one in. I'm going to say the quiet part out loud. The Chicago Bulls have to regret not getting worse in the 2025 offseason, which sounds crazy, but this team is 17-18 right now. They're the 9th seed. They're not winning a playoff series. They're probably going to be in the playing tournament. It's the same exact thing every single year with this team. Maybe you could say they regret not drafting Derek Queen and they selected Noah Essengay. Maybe not making that trade with the New Orleans Pelicans and getting that unprotected swap this year. I'd rather have that than Noah Essengay for the long term. Nikola Vucevic is still on this roster. I'm not saying that Nikola Vucevic is a bad player, but we watched Portland waive and buy out DeAndre Ayton in the offseason. Now, that was to get Donovan Clingan more minutes, but you could have went that route if you couldn't trade Vucevic. This is exactly what you don't need Vucevic to do. Help you win games this year, and these are going to be meaningless games in the long run. Montes Buzelis has looked good this year. Josh Giddey's looked good this year. But this team has way too many talented veterans to make you pretty much mid, and that's not where Chicago needs to be. They do not need to be mid right now. They need to be where Charlotte is, Brooklyn is, and heck, even where Indiana and Washington are in the Eastern Conference if they want to maximize their odds of getting a top pick in the draft to get a Darren Peterson, AJ DeBenza, or Cameron Boozer. Because if they keep picking in the late lottery every single year, it's going to be so hard to find that franchise player. I mean, can I just put the Sacramento Kings offseason in here, just like the whole thing? Now, I don't mind their draft getting Nick Clifford, but hey, trading away a future first rounder for Nick Clifford isn't the worst idea, but when you're one of the worst teams in the NBA with Nick Clifford being 23 years old, it is tough to justify in the long term. I like Maxime Reynaud in the second. I like Dylan Cardwell as an undrafted free agent, but there's just not that many bright spots on this team right now. Keegan Murray got a massive extension before the season started. Could they have just waited a year to give Keegan the same contract extension? Maybe not trading away Malik Monk in the offseason, who I think has lost some value this year. Keon Ellis has definitely lost some value this year. Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, Domantas Sabonis, all these guys have lost value for this team, and they're not even playing Keon Ellis that much, or Devin Carter, their lottery pick from the 2024 draft, because they opted to sign Dennis Schroeder after what he did for Team Germany in the FIBA World Cup, who they may just trade in a couple weeks, or Russell Westbrook as well. I'm glad Russell Westbrook is on a team in the year 2026, and he's been one of the best Sacramento Kings, but why are you playing Russ this amount every single night when you're 8-28? This team has been extremely disappointing this year, and they have to regret almost every single single move they made a couple months ago. And then my last one here, I think could also be controversial in a way. I would love to know what you guys think, Bucks fans. I'm going to say Milwaukee going out and signing Miles Turner, which also came at the expense of them waiving and stretching Damian Lillard for the next 5 years. So Milwaukee's going to be paying Damian Lillard about $20 million for the next 5 years not to be on their basketball team. And I get it, right? Because you're trying to maximize this team before Giannis Antetokounmpo maybe wants out or could not want to sign a long-term extension. Dame wasn't going to help you this year after tearing his Achilles, so you needed to get somebody on this roster that can help you this year. And Miles Turner is still objectively a good player, but they gave over $100 million to Miles Turner, who's really not been, I think, worth $100 million this year. He's averaging 12 points, 5 rebounds, 1.5 assists. He's shooting 41% from the field as a center, which is by far the lowest of his career, just 47% on twos. Yeah, that is insane because he's taking a ton more threes because he's playing with Giannis Antetokounmpo, who kind of likes to be a de facto center at times. And Miles Turner's been a fine enough three-point shooter, 37.5% at 6 attempts a night, but I'm not saying that Miles Turner is really the defensive player he's been in the past. He's a fine defender, but he's not in that top tier of Wemby, Chet, Bam Adebayo, and Rudy Gobert. And it's easy to use this in hindsight. That's pretty much what this video is, but what if you sprinkled the $108 million over the course of 4 years, around $26 million a year to go after some of the other free agents, just to make this team a little bit more deep, and they could have had a little bit more flexibility this year at the trade deadline. Because I don't really know how I feel about paying Miles Turner $26 million a year for the next 4 years, especially if Giannis Antetokounmpo isn't on this team anymore. So that is gonna be it for me. Hope you guys did enjoy. Just to recap, I have the Los Angeles Clippers trading away Norman Powell, the New Orleans Pelicans trading away that unprotected pick swap for Derek Queen, not the Queen draft pick itself, but more so the trade, just the whole Sacramento Kings offseason, almost every single move they made, even giving Doug Christie the full-time head coach role, because I do think he's been one of the worst head coaches in the league this year. The Warriors not trading Jonathan Kuminga, and they definitely lost some value on that trade here. The Knicks signing Knicks Yabusele with their taxpayer exception. The Miles Turner signing to the Milwaukee Bucks, with also them waiving and stretching Damian Lillard. Dallas not adding a more competent point guard either in free agency or the trade market. And Chicago just not getting worse and just throwing out basically a 38-44 roster for like the 5th year in a row. So yeah, let me know what you agree with or disagree with, and let me know if there's a bigger regret out there. Maybe it's the Lakers adding some type of defender. Maybe it's the Knicks firing Tibbs. You can let me know what you think down below. Subscribe if you're not already. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.